Hello today. My name is John Skees. I'm the Director of Media for TAPS. Thank you for joining us for this pre-recorded presentation on summer rules. We're joined today by Brian Bunselmeyer, the TAPS Executive Director, and Robert Huckabee, TAPS Associate Director and Director of Compliance. Also helping us today is Will Dixon behind the keyboard. And with that, just to get things started, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Thank you for joining us here today as we go over a brief recap of the summer rules, as we're all pretty much there, are going to be there shortly. Want to make sure we keep you out of trouble and right down the groove, right down the middle of the lane. So summer rules for 2021 are reverting back to the rules pre-COVID. It's good to be able to say that that's in our rearview mirror for now, and we're looking at returning to whatever the new normal is. The summer rules are also included in the TAPS bylaws. That's going to be section 136 of the TAPS bylaws. Robert, tell us how we get there.
All right. Hey, Will, if you can jump over to that TAPS website, all of our governance is found there. You go to the main page, which you're seeing right now, and then over on the right, you'll see that column that says resources. That second category is called bylaws. If you click on that, it takes a few seconds for a big old Google Doc to download. And there's the Constitution first, and then over on the left side, you'll see populating there are the list of bylaws. Scroll all the way down to 136. Section 136 is where we have all of our in-season, off-season, and summer rules. So that's a big section. It's several pages, but that's where you'll find the information you need on summer rules. You can scroll through there, and there's different categories there. You can pick those. Several of them have summer notations in there. Those are the things that we're going to be going over briefly today, but that's where you can find that resource. Remember, when you're in that Google Doc, if you're searching for a particular keyword or item, there is a search function, Control F. If you'll hit Control F, a little box will pop up. You can type in your keywords and it'll take you to, there you go, Will typed in football and it jumped to anywhere the word football appears. That's a little shortcut for you if you keep that in mind as you're looking for rules in our governance. Brian?
So we're going to jump into summer rules. That begins the beginning of summer rules, the last day of your instruction for the present year. So most of you have already had your last day. Some of you are having it this week. So once the last day of 2020-21 is over, you go into the summer rules category. And how long do summer rules last? Well, they last until Dead Week begins, and this year Dead Week will begin on July 26th. So for most of you, once the last day of school has occurred for the last school year, then you're ready to go until you get to July the 26th, which is the beginning of Dead Week, and we have a whole conversation about Dead Week coming up at the end of this situation. Robert, walk through just a little bit about the basics of the summer rules and what we're trying to accomplish here.
There are some restrictions during the summer, but things are a little more lax than during the school year. For instance, participation is allowed in many respects, but it is voluntary. Participation in summer activities has to be on a voluntary basis. Participation cannot be tied to a roster or position for the coming year. You can't make those kind of things mandatory. You can keep records of attendance and progress if you want to keep things there in the weight room and have charts and organize kids by categories. You're certainly allowed to do those kinds of things. Just be careful that that attendance doesn't become some expectation of mandatory attendance. Keep those things in mind as you go through that. Those are the basic parameters. We'll talk more about camps and leagues and those things here in a second. But what can we do with regard to our, we'll jump to that next one, individual and group training. Can I pay my staff? Yes, you can. That's a decision left to the discretion of your school. If you have coaches or stipend coaches or full-time people that work during the school year, but you want to pay them differently during the summer or pay them for some extra work they're doing in the summer, that's certainly allowed. That's nothing that TAPS has any restrictions on. That's subject to your local control and decisions made, how you manage that at the school level. Brian, talk to us a little about who can participate coming into the summer if you're not already a student at our member school.
Robert, before we jump there, let's go back to that payment of staff. I think that we would be open to most any way of paying, whether the parents paid them directly, if it was a weightlifting camp or a basketball camp or opportunity, or they could run that through the school account. Does that make sense to you, or am I on the right page?
No, we leave that up to our schools. You manage that as best you can. Like we mentioned, and we'll mention several times, there are some of our restrictions during the school year that do not apply during the summer.
So for those tennis coaches that you've been wanting to pay, or those golf coaches, this is a great opportunity for them to actually give that instruction and be paid, because we're not during the school year, we're under summer rules. So participation of incoming 9th grade students, once they matriculate out of the 8th grade, meaning they have graduated 8th grade, the 8th grade is finished at their previous school. If that was your school, the last day of 8th grade at your school, and now they move into the summer hours and they're enrolled in your school, they are good to go. They don't have to have a transfer form, because they are not high school students transferring one side to the other. So once they have, the previous school year is over for them, and then once they have enrolled, they can begin attending your summer situations. As we go to high school transferring students, those students that have already attended a day or two of high school somewhere else, they're a transfer student. Again, they must have had the last day of school at their high school. So if their high school doesn't end till June the 8th or June the 10th or whatever, then they cannot begin working with you at your place until that school year is ended. So previous school year is ended. They do have enrolled. They have worked through all their testing, or they're working through it. That's how they get to be able to play with you on your summer league teams, on your 7-on-7 teams, etc. Again, they do not have to have their transfer paperwork completed. We will definitely take it in our office as soon as you get it. So rank 1 is turned over and move forward. So if you do have incoming transfer students, or students that transferred during the spring, or we're going to be there for next year, the sooner we get that paperwork done, the happier I think we will all be as we move forward. So high school students and 9th grade students, the previous year at their school before is over, and now we move on to the next opportunity. So Robert, tell us a little bit about what is included when we talk about team sports and individual sports.
That's an important distinction to make when we're talking about either summer or during the school year. Our team sports are governed by rules that are slightly different than our individual sports. Team sports include baseball, basketball, football, soccer. We have winter and fall soccer, softball, and volleyball. Those are our team sports where you compete at that level. When you move into the world of individual sports, we're talking about cross country, golf, swimming, tennis, track and field, wrestling. Those are characterized as our lifetime sports. Even during the school year, those don't have all the same restrictions for coaching and other things that some of our other team sports do with regard to the beginning and ending of a sports season. In the summer, those are all pretty much treated the same. Those students in all those are allowed to work out and participate with our coaches in schools on a level playing field.
So during the summer, the key here is not whether it's an individual or a team sport. You could probably throw lacrosse and field hockey in there too under the team side, since we're kind of taking those under our banner a little bit with our tournaments. But the key word here is contact hours. So for each activity, you have 15 contact hours. Well, if you'll jump on down there, a maximum of 15 contact hours per week. So if a young man is in baseball and in football and you're having workouts in both and doing weight training, 15 hours. Young ladies trying to double up in volleyball and softball and swimming or whatever, they still get 15 contact hours with your school and each student. So it includes all activities, whether it's team or individual. That includes weight room, individual or group instruction. It also would include if you have a gym where they're all going to lift weights in the morning and go shoot during the day, and you're going to supervise that gym. The key there is, are you supervising it? And again, contact hours are voluntary hours, so you cannot make it mandatory. It's voluntary hours, 15 hours. What's not included to that is travel to games and the actual games themselves. So if you're on 7-on-7 and you're going out of town to come into our tournament at the end of this month, then that travel time and the actual games do not count. We're really working on workouts. We're working on individual and specific instruction. Robert, talk to us a little bit about the guidelines on sports-specific training, if there are any during the summer.
During the summer, you can have sports-specific training. You can get out there with baseball, with basketball, volleyball, any of those team sports. You can get out there, team or individual, and you can have sports-specific training. Okay, there are some limitations on football with equipment and pads. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But otherwise, it's that 15 maximum hours of contact that you need to be wary of, that you need to monitor on your level. That sports-specific training is allowed. There are some restrictions and things allowed on equipment and stuff that we'll talk about here in a minute.
So Robert, during the school year for that off-season workout, we say that that hour either has to be included in the day or immediately abut the school day or the school end. So it's very restrictive. Are there any time requirements on when this can occur? Can I do it at night? Can I do it at dark 30 in the morning? Are there any time restrictions on when I can have those contact hours?
No restrictions. You schedule that as you wish. In the summer, we know a lot of our schools do things early in the morning or throughout the day. They work around the student schedule or other activities at the school. We give our schools the discretion to schedule and do those as you see fit based on your students, those schedules, and the availability of your facilities.
As we move on, and we have two things here that I'm thinking about: select teams and summer leagues. So we'll start with summer leagues. Are coaches allowed to coach during the summer in these summer leagues? And if so, what restrictions would there be as we get farther into August or July? Help us walk through that a little bit.
So you are allowed to have summer leagues. You are allowed to participate in leagues, form leagues. TAPS coaches can coach their own athletes in these summer leagues. That is allowed. Just be careful as you schedule those and move into the world of the end of the summer, dead week, and then moving into the fall season. Once you hit that beginning of dead week, you could not participate with those students any longer as their coach. So just be careful of that. We get a lot of questions about this because of the schedules of some of these summer leagues and tournaments. Reach out to our office if you have any questions. We'll help you walk through those details.
I think the rule of thumb is if they're representing you as the Wildcats, the Eagles, that during the summer league, they can wear your uniforms, they can be recognized as your high school, et cetera. The big key here is that if they're in that summer league and you get to dead week, they can't be a part of it either. So you may have to negotiate and say, hey, we'll play twice the week before, we'll do a doubleheader the week before, but no competition during dead week. I think that's important. The same thing is true of select teams. From the end of the school year until the beginning of dead week, then you can be a part of the select teams, the travel squads, the AAU, whatever. But once dead week comes, you have to back off both practice and games. Is that correct, Robert?
That is correct. Dead week is dead, and we will talk about those limitations here in just a second.
Give us a little recap on individual and team camps, because that always comes up. In my mind, I keep thinking about a camp being that week-long deal that we did for little kids, that elementary and middle school students came up. What are some limitations on camps, and can you give us that definition, section 1, just off the top of your head? I'm hitting you kind of making an ad lib here, but the way I remember the definition of camp, it has a defined beginning and end date, and usually that's not more than 1 week. Help us understand the differences between those individual and team camps and how that applies during the summer.
Camps are defined in section 1. Section 1 of our bylaws are the definitions. So always, if you have questions about camps, go to section 1. And Brian is correct. That's a defined period of time. When we say camp, remember that a lot of things, even during the school year, camps are not limited. They are allowed at certain times, but certainly the summer is the prevalent time for our schools to host those camps and for our students or coaches to attend those camps or assist in working those camps. So a camp is generally defined as that one specific time, 7 days or less. We don't want you to say, well, I'm having a camp, but it's going to be 1 day a week for the next 6 weeks or something like that, and turning that into a summer-long event. We don't want that, but you're allowed to have camps. You're allowed to have your students in those camps. Your coaches can run and participate and coach in those camps. You could have a camp, as Brian mentioned, maybe for some of the younger students. Your high school students and athletes could work in those camps and help participate and run those camps. And you could even pay them for their participation and their help in coaching and assisting, just like you would anyone else that you're paying to run the camp. So a lot of those things are defined there in section 1. There are camps that you can have for your specific students, whether it's a particular camp with regard to general things like weightlifting and instruction, or it could be sports specific. That is allowed.
So my thought on that, and Robert, correct me here if I'm wrong, if the student's working for you, that does not count in that 15 contact hours. They're exempt as long as they're there working your camp as a counselor or whatever. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct. If you had a student that was attending a camp, that does not count in those 15 hours. Those are considered camp participation. That doesn't count against your maximum of 15 hours per week. And if you had those students actually working in a camp, that wouldn't count against those 15 hours either.
So we mentioned section 1. So Will showed us earlier, you go to taps.biz, you click on resources, and you click on the bylaws. You don't have to go very far to get to section 1, but in there is the definition of a coach, the definition of a camp, the definition of open gym and open weight room. And I would also say that most of those open weight room, open gyms would also apply to open fields, and they would also apply to open batting cages, et cetera. So all those have a very similar program. So section 1 of the TAPS bylaws, taps.biz, top row, click on resources and drop down to the bylaws. So as we go through strength and conditioning, we call it strength and conditioning, whether it be weightlifting, whether it be quick step, whether it be anything along those lines where you're working to increase their core, et cetera. Those are all included in those 15 hours, and we highly encourage you to keep attendance. We highly encourage you to mark progress, especially in the weight room. We know that that can be an accident waiting to happen sometimes, and we definitely need you as coaches and you as athletic directors to make sure those things are monitored. Robert, walk us through some of the football specific rules that you mentioned were coming soon.
All right, Brian. We mentioned earlier that football would have some specific limitations. Most likely, the most significant one is with regard to equipment. You can practice. You could have a football practice. It wouldn't be the traditional full padded practice like you'll move into when the school year gets started, but you could get out there and do a lot of things football related, and that is allowed. It's sport specific, and it's just treated just like anything else. There are some restrictions on equipment, things that are approved and not approved. And Will, this is a good point to jump back over to that website, if you will, and let us show you where you can find the restricted and non-restricted equipment. If you'll go to the TAPS website, click on athletics, let that populate, and then go down to football, go to the football page. Once that populates, you'll scroll down, and there will be a topic there, that blue, restricted and non-restricted equipment. This is directly out of the NCAA rules, and you'll see it populates a page there that lists the restricted equipment. This is equipment that would be restricted at all times of the year other than during football season. So this is not allowed. The restricted equipment is not allowed in the summer, and it's not allowed in the off season with regard to football. So this is a little bit unique to football because of the nature of the game and the equipment that's involved. But you can see, you can scroll through that. I'm not going to go through all the details. Certain pads and dummies are not allowed during this time. Full pads would not be allowed during this time. And then there's a list of things that are that you can utilize during that time. The non-restricted equipment, these are things you can use. And any creative coach can go through this and find those dummies and things that are out there that you can use in certain ways, where you can do a lot of things, but those things will keep you short of full contact, full pad type interaction.
So kind of going into that, the questions that we've had lately are, there's some universities and schools out of state that are hosting full padded, full helmet camps. So as you go through there, you as a member school cannot host a full padded camp for high school students. If someone comes on your campus, that third party, you can't have your kids participate in a full padded camp there on your campus. If it's a third party at another site, that's a whole nother question. So if it's a university in your town or locally that wants to have a full padded camp, that's at the student's discretion to go participate. I would be the padded camps just give us a lot of, I don't want to say liability, that's probably an overextension of the word, but exposure. If you're letting your helmets and your pads go out, you just need to be very careful with your risk manager on whether or not they're going to allow that to go out and whether your insurance covers, and in the event legal action is taken back. Can your school coaches coach at a third party camp, either on your campus or otherwise? Yes, they can. The only thing is during dead week, they could coach at a camp as well, but your kids can't be there during dead week. So football specific rules, look at them. If you've got a struggle or whatever, please reach back out to us so that we can help you walk through that. We definitely want to make it where it's as easy. We've tried to make it easy, and sometimes in doing so, we make it hard. We get that. We understand that sometimes our best intentions don't necessarily get there. So reach out to us at info@taps.biz. We also get the question of, when can I do tryouts? Do I have to wait till that first day in August, that first Monday in August when the new year starts? Robert, talk to us a little bit about tryouts and how you see that happening within the rules of summer participation.
It's a question we get frequently throughout the summer, and then as we move into the beginning of August. The answer is yes, you could have tryouts during the summer. But here's where you need to be careful. Remember that all summer participation under the basic rules we discussed earlier have to be mandatory. So if you have a program, and typically it's going to be your football, volleyball, your beginning sports there in the fall, you're trying to get ahead of the game a little bit. You could have tryouts, but you need to be very, very careful that nothing is mandatory. Nothing is stated that it's mandatory. Nothing even implies or assumes that it's mandatory, because I'm going to tell you who we're going to get a call from. We're going to get a call from somebody's parent, and they're not going to be happy about the selections. And then we get to looking and they get to giving us information about how it was published and how it was characterized, and it's going to look like it was mandatory. So yes, you can have tryouts, but just be very, very careful. If you have questions, reach out to us. We can help you walk through that. But it is potentially a time bomb for you if you push that envelope too much.
And we say that with a great deal of caution urged. Make sure the whole athletic department, athletic directors, head of school, make sure everybody understands what's going on during the tryout phase. It's very key to make sure your terms are used appropriately. The word mandatory is not the only word that can be used to describe that. So moving out of tryouts, Will, let's drop down to this big thing that we have in TAPS called Dead Week. So, Robert, if you'll give us the basics of Dead Week, and then I'll chime in a little bit as we go forward.
Okay, Dead Week is that week immediately prior to when we begin fall activities. So that's typically going to be the very last week in July, because we'll begin activities that first Monday in August. This year, that's going to be July 26th through July 31st. That is always published on our TAPS calendar. If you ever have any questions about when Dead Week occurs, you'll know it's that week before we start, but those specific dates are published on the calendar. The question always arises, what can I do and not do during Dead Week? The simple answer is not very much at all. We list those in section 136, things that are not allowed during Dead Week: no team meetings, no team building activities, no team camps, no physicals, no open gyms, no open weight rooms. Let me talk a little bit about something that does come up from time to time. I know a lot of you do your impact testing, and you are limited and restricted sometimes in when those people who conduct those for you are available or can get to you. We've had requests before, hey, if I set it up and structure it this way, and this is all we're doing, or they're going to someplace else to get it done, would that be allowed? Reach out to us if you have those kind of restrictions. We can help walk you through that and maybe find a way for you to get some things accomplished, but at the same time, honor those restrictions of Dead Week.
Robert, I think on physicals, it's the same way. Coming out of this COVID pandemic, we know that some doctors' offices are backed up. And if you have an opportunity, and that's the only opportunity, again, reach out to us at info@taps.biz or give us a call here at the office so that we can walk through the options. The physical is going to outweigh a lot of things, but we need to know the backing behind it so that when your fellow school down the road calls and said, hey, I saw all their kids over there on campus, we can at least help defend you in that same situation.
Yeah, the key is don't take advantage of these situations. Obviously, everybody wants to get a head start, but we don't want anybody jump starting the season and using an opportunity like that to have a meeting, to pass out information, to do those kinds of things. Certainly no practices or anything like that. But there are a couple of things, medical related, physicals, and the impact testing, that if you reach out to us, we can probably assist you and work through that and keep you within the guidelines of the Dead Week rules.
And then during Dead Week, it's during Dead Week and the 3 days that you have to take off during that Christmas vacation, that winter break. Those are the things that you cannot have an open gym, you can't have an open weight room, you can't have open fields, and you can't have open cages or et cetera for baseball, softball. So what are we trying to say? They can't be there. So what if I'm a coach or I'm the athletic director? Can my kid come lift weights at school with me? The answer is should not be happening. I'm a teacher and my kids can come up there and shoot baskets all day. No, it's a closed gym, it's a closed weight room, it's a closed field, and it's closed cages. Now, can they still use your equipment somewhere else? In other words, if they're in a baseball league that you're not coaching and you're allowing them to use your batting helmets or your bats, which now these days, that's kind of a bygone phrase too, because most of the kids own their own. But if you do have something like that, where they're wearing your jerseys one last time or whatever, those things are a little different. But again, they shouldn't be in a summer league during dead week either. So again, the easy way to say it is, what can a dead man do? And not much. So Robert, fill us in a little bit more.
We get this question, can my coaches meet during dead week? Yes, you can. That's not a restriction. Remember, the dead week restrictions apply to interaction and participation with your student athletes. So keep that in mind. The coaches we would encourage you to take that week off, lock the doors, get away, spend time with your family. I think the initial purpose of Dead Week was to give our coaches and schools and administrators, I know everybody's busy getting ready for school, but to give you a week where you just don't have any concerns about any participation, any interaction, any responsibility with regard to your student athletes.
And Robert, I think what we've learned over the last year is virtual and in person in this case are the same thing. You can't have team meetings via Zoom. You should not be giving homework to your kids to say, hey, I've cut these huddle films up. We want to make sure that that is a time when the students can go see grandma, go visit their aunt and uncle, make that family trip. Same thing for our coaches. So it started a while back. It stayed. It's one of the things that's become a part of the TAPS fixture. What can happen during Dead Week are fine arts. So regardless of where you have them classified at your school, TAPS allows band and cheer and dance and drumline and one-act play. Sometimes Dead Week, especially with volleyball going on, that might be the only chance that some of these young ladies are going to have a chance to go out there and participate. Young men as well, whether it be band or drumline, dance or cheer, that might be the only time they get to go work out with that particular group unencumbered by athletics. So again, the fine arts, as TAPS defines them, regardless of whether you have them in fine arts or athletics, the band, the cheer, the dance, drumline, one-act play would all get to participate. Robert, my understanding over the years has been, well, what happens after Dead Week? So August the 2nd is going to be the first opportunity for our schools and our coaches to get back together again and have the first day of fall practice. But one big concern is that's for fall activities and that is for individual activities. So once we get into the fall, there is no off season for basketball or soccer or baseball or softball until your school year begins. Am I stating that correctly from your understanding as well?
That is correct. Yes.
So it's always hard that the cross-country guys out there running the kids, it's August the 3rd, or we've got a tennis player that's out there working out, or the golfer, in addition to football and the volleyball, and the basketball coach is going nuts because he wants to have his time. He wants to have his 1 hour a day. He doesn't get 1 hour a day, or she doesn't get 1 hour a day until you can't have off season until you have school start. So there's a dead period between the team sports that are not in season. There's a dead period between August 2nd and whenever your school starts before you can have off season. Again, that would also go to coaching, correct, Robert? They couldn't coach during that time before school starts, and they definitely can't coach in the off-season leagues. That's where Section 136 shifts from summer rules to the off-season school year, correct?
That is correct. The only opportunity that would be available for those students would be the open gym or the open weight room. But certainly that's available, but you couldn't be giving specific instruction. You couldn't have a basketball practice or anything like that, but you could have an open gym and an open weight room during that period between when we start in August and then the actual first day of your school when you could begin off-season programs.
And when you say the word open, I hear the word voluntary pop up in my head, so you can't make them come. And the other thing is, again, anytime you have an open weight room or an open weight room, it's open for anybody to come, or the doors are open. It needs to be manned. It needs to have coaches or adults involved. We just can't, it's such a liability aspect out there. We definitely don't want young men and women hurt in the weight room when they're trying to improve themselves. So summer rules, we hope we answered a few of them. If you have questions, please reach out to us at info@taps.biz or give us a call at the TAPS office, 254-947-9268, info@taps.biz, 254-947-9268. We appreciate you greatly for taking the time today to listen to this presentation.